Hi, this is Marlene, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Whether you're watching a video or listening to a podcast, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. Links to videos or MP3 files can be found on MiamiGhostChronicles.com. Go to MarlenePardo.com for information on new book releases. I narrate several podcast series that can be found on major podcast platforms and can also be listened to via Alexa, Sonos, and other home systems. Look for Supernatural Storytime for scary storytelling, Nightshade Diary for classic horror and adventure stories, Stories of the Supernatural for interviews with different guests on the show. If you want to get noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird, you can visit Strange Than Fiction Stories tab at MiamiGhostChronicles.com or find us on Blogspot. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. I am doing great. Fantastic. Kind of. I know a lot of people always follow me in my chicken world adventures, and right now I am nursing a busted up knee the other day, because it's the rainy season here in Florida, and the other day, anybody that's had chickens will know that they kind of like decimate your grass and your vegetation. So in my chicken pen, it's mostly mud when it rains, and I was feeding them, and I took a break from when it wasn't raining, and I didn't realize just how muddy it was, and I did one of those, when you're trying to I'm about to eat it and you're trying to keep your feet under you, and I did something to my knee. I don't know what I did, but whatever it wasn't good. So I'm walking around like Quasimodo. Yeah, that's one of the, right now I'm like, and I've got a thing, and I'm being convinced to go and take a whatchamacallit, I can't put weight on it, in other words, to go and get a CAT scan done on it, because there's only so much ibuprofen you can take. So yeah, that's my adventures in chicken land. Yeah, it wasn't the chickens themselves, but taking care of the chickens. That's what brought it about. But anyway, guys, let's get on to the good stuff. The good stuff being who I have as a guest tonight. And this is a gentleman who's been here before. You guys love it when he comes on because he has great stories, and I'm talking about Mr. Allan Pacheco. Now, Allan, what he does, he's an author, an investigator, metaphysician. He's a historian. He's a SAG actor. He's born in Santa Fe, and all his family hail from that area for hundreds of years. But the interesting thing is that for many, many, many years, he's done ghost and history tours through Santa Fe. And we were talking right before we started to record about what should we talk about, because he's got some great stories. Ghost stories, historical, legendary. Some of these things sometimes are based in fact. Others, the actual, what it's based on has been long gone. But anyway, before we go any further, let me bring him on. How are you doing today, Allan?
Hello, Marlena. I'm doing fantastic. I hope you get well. I'm sorry to hear about.
Yeah, I know. I forgot to mention. I'm telling you, it's like anybody would have been filming him, it would have been hilarious. I did everything that I could to keep my feet under me, and I didn't eat it into the mud. But I twisted my knee such a way, I don't know what I did with it, but all of a sudden I couldn't put weight on my leg, on my my left leg on the knee, and I'm telling you. And I was like, okay, let me let a day go by. Maybe it's just, you twist something. Yeah, that's not going away. So there we go. So yeah, I'm walking around because I don't want to put weight on it. So yeah.
Well, I tell you what, if you feel something flapping inside there, on the side or at the bottom of your kneecap there, then you're going to have to go to a doctor and see.
Well, I know. I the good thing is if I'm sitting down, like right now, I'm sitting, it doesn't hurt me. Okay, and if it's not, my sleep, it's not like it's hurting all the time. It's when I get up and I put your weight, you distribute it between both your legs. That's when and nothing's. I know what you're saying. nothing in there. It just feels really sore, like inside. And yeah, it's when you go through a couple of days of it not getting better, and you're taking pain reliever, and all it's just is like, I can't afford to keep hobbling around,
Right.
dragging a leg behind me. But yeah, that's one of
Dragging
the
a
joys of having a farm and chickens, I guess. You don't think about base. I'm trying to keep my feet under me in a mud pie, because that's what
yeah.
it was. And
Well, dragging your foot behind you, huh? That's
yeah,
pretty
that's what
good.
I'm
We're
saying.
doing it.
I'm like Quasimodo, master, whatever the bells, whatever, because that's what I feel like.
Well, I tell
And
you what, if you get a monkey's paw in the
oh,
mail, then it's all over.
well, you know what? What? Oh, that's a whole nother show. Okay.
The monkey's paw.
I
Oh.
know, I know, I know. Now, let me tell you something. Don't whatever you do, don't get that third wish. Whatever.
Yeah.
Um. So anyway, as I was explaining to the audience, Alan, you've been doing this for many years. You're an actor. You're a SAG actor. You've been doing these tours for many years. So you've heard of all these different stories, whether they're ghost stories or historical. And you right before we started, we were talking about a house, and I said, "Stop it! You got to tell this story when we're recording."
Okay. Now, are we talking about the House of the Brujas or the House of the 100 Dogs?
Oh my God! Any,
How about
meeny, miny.
let's go to the House of the Brujas. How's that?
Go with that. Let's go.
Oh, okay.
For
Well,
those of you who don't speak Spanish, that's the House of the Witches.
yeah. And we want to be soft about it.
Yeah.
Curanderas, voodoo
Curanderas,
women.
right?
But
Exactly.
these were witches.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, since September of last year here in Santa Fe, and maybe all around the USA, uh, we paranormal activity has been spiking, and I've never seen it like this before. Now, there's been some spikes in the past, but nothing as, how do you say, as wicked as what's been going on. And cliche is all hell's about to break loose.
Hmm.
Well, here goes into this. I'll tell you a little bit of the background of this house and the story, and then about this photo that I took, and this is dovetails into the story. The witch's house is the oldest house in the USA, the House of the Brujas, and according to lore, legend, facts, everything, lies, half truths. When the Spaniards got here, this was this mud wooden house was where the cacique and the witch doctors lived. Now that's logical, because
Okay.
next door is going to be the kiva, and a kiva is going to be this huge room in the ground where the witch doctors will be doing their invokings, their blood rites, etc. here. So, okay, history goes along. The Spaniards get here, then the Spaniards get driven on out, and then they come back again in 1692. So, 1692 into the 1700s, this house that used to be the witch doctor's house, the cacique's house, this becomes a house of two brujas, two witches. And of course, in those days, Spanish culture, specifically here in the Southwest, if you are a young lady of money, you have no choice in the matter of who you're going to get married to.
Hmm.
Papa picks the groom. And there was this man by the name of Juan Espinosa. And Juan Espinosa had no money and lived here in Santa Fe and was in love with a wealthy young lady. So he buys a talisman from these two brujas, and his game plan is that he's going to hand it to her, and she's going to be emboldened, and she's going to elbow Papa and Mama, and magic's going to happen, and Juan Espinosa is going to get picked to be the groom. Now, I can go into other type of details about where he lived and all this kind of stuff. I just want to get to the guts of the story here. So,
Okay.
it doesn't work because he doesn't have any money, and another story is that he's very uncouth. Now, he comes back very, very angry to the Brujas, and he has a new game plan. He is going to take out his number one rival and any future rivals by way of hemlock. He's going to poison his foes. But
Okay.
the the brujas do not sell him the hemlock. Again, different stories. The most logical, he doesn't have enough coin to buy it.
Right.
So he's going to take this venom no matter what. But these are two tough old brujas. So hands fly, furniture flies, and he ends on up, thrashing them. And as one gets thrown into another part of the building there, another part of the room, the other one comes up behind him with a dagger, butcher knife, and gets him either in the neck or in the head, and kills him. Now, what they do is they end on up decapitating his head and cursing it, and they throw it outside of the house. And this house still exists here in Santa Fe. And they throw it onto this road, and the road, since Wild West days, is called the Old Santa Fe Trail. That's that famous
Right. Okay,
trail.
I've heard of that.
Okay, but today it's paved. Okay, so during rainstorms with lightning, and this goes back to, like 50 years ago, people every now and then would say that they would see the decapitated head of Juan Espinosa for split-second, nanoseconds, just very, very short time span there on Old Santa Fe Trail, and be there, or would roll, and then disappear. Okay, so a lot of people say, oh, balderdash. No such thing. Okay, well, there may be something to that story. About 8 weeks ago, I'm doing a midnight tour. Now, on my tours, I got all kinds of gadgets and stuff, for ghosts and energy, see if I can photograph them, see if I can get them to appear, etc. Okay, so I'm going down this pathway, and this pathway is behind the oldest house, the Brujas house. And for the first time, I used some green laser. I'm not going to go into details about how I use green laser, but but the people on the tour, I do private tours, they're ghostometers, and they got all kinds of them, and they start going wild all at once. And, look at this. Can you believe this? And what did you do, Allan? What? So I start taking photos, and I take photos, and what do I get on one of my snapshots? The face or the head of a tough, mean-looking man who looks like a conquistador, like the days of Juan Espinosa. And I mean, this is one of these guys. You look at him and says, he's in the mood not to take any prisoners. And it's people that have seen the photo say, oh, that's got to be a fake. Well, it's the best photo I've ever taken of that type. Now, I've taken some ghost photos in the past, but this one looks so good it looks like something out of a wax museum. So the point being about this, well, is this the ghost, the spirit of Juan Espinosa, or it could be the spirit of some other Spanish conquistador that got killed to the north of the Brujas house. But I'm thinking that this haunting has transferred from Old Santa Fe Trail to this other area, because witches, modern-day brujas, Luciferians, etc., have been doing all kinds of invokings in this area that I'm talking about. And
wow.
I'll tell you something else here too. And this is so damn good. I mean, you can say, "Well, you're really making this on up." No, this is the truth. So I'm doing another midnight tour, and I'm walking on. I guess I shouldn't be telling because I'm going to get people into trouble for. Okay, I'm walking down this area in the vicinity of where this the invokings happen with modern day witches, in the area of where this head I took a picture of, this face was. And I'm walking with this group, and I'm doing my midnight tour. And how this lane works, there's wall, fence, there's trees, I'm being as vague as I can be, and because I don't want people to go on over there. But the thing about this is we turn the corner, we start to go down where this corner is, and out from beyond this kink in the lane there, this guy, devil worshiper, Warlock, He's has the Ringo Starr haircut. He's got the black pullover Anton LaVey smock,
Okay.
the black pants. And he's got wearing something silver around his neck. Well, he peers around about 3/4 of his body. You're able to see, and he's just really shocked that we're coming on down this pathway. I don't know what he was doing with his invokings in there, but he sees us, and instead of trying to play it cool, he just
Yes,
bolts
it's a
out.
tour group. Holy
Yeah,
crap.
he just bolts out down not past us, but down the other direction on over there. So there's this other guy next to me, and he's built like a tank, and he's got the he's got the camera to his eye. And I turned to him. Did you get that? Did you see him? Did you see him? Yeah, Alan, I saw it all, but I didn't record it. I got too frightened. And I thought to myself, yeah, man, look at you. You're like built like an NFL linebacker. You're all show, no go. I mean, you keep
Yeah, it's
getting
like that,
photos.
just in case, just in case.
Yeah. So so that's what I'm talking about this head, and this is a new, how do you say, chapter in my future memoirs. I think that this haunting, I now will say that this, gosh, what do I call it? Well, energy is no longer there on the old Santa Fe Trail. It's in other locations. It's moved. And that does happen every now and then. You do have a haunting that's going to move X amount of yards, etc., a distance from where the original haunting was. Why that happens, I'm not really too sure. It could be from the invokings of them bringing it on over to a different place. That can happen.
Do you think that that the people that are going in there casting spells or whatever, they're doing it because that house originally was supposed to be La Casa de las Brujas, the House of the Brujas? Is that why? Or
Well, yeah. Well, it's not only that, but it's also, even if you don't know it, there's people that are that good into the dark arts that they can feel the energy. Even people that are with the angels, they'll go on into this place, into the oldest house, and they'll say, "Wow, I'm really uncomfortable on over here. I'm getting heart palpitations. Something just touched me, Alan." I got this one picture of this one journalist from years ago when newspapers were king, and she's inside this one room, and one of the rooms is where, the story is about where they used to cook the children. And she's in there, and all of a sudden, she's something touches both of her elbows. Yow! And I happen to have my camera there, and there she is in complete shock of what was that just touched my elbows. Yeah, that whole area is chock full with energy going back to pre-Columbian day, and even modern day. There's murders in the street beyond the house. There's an energy there that is contaminates people.
right, so there's something about the land itself, is what you're saying.
Right. Yeah.
That predates even that story, so maybe they chose it themselves for a reason to begin with.
Well, exactly, because there's a reason. There's energy there that Santa Fe, this area, there are certain locations that you have energy, and it can be, well, for lack of better words, a doorway to hell, a doorway to another dimension, or ground that has absorbed a lot of negativity. There's energy lines, or for lack of a better word, ley lines, like Tesla lines, these natural lines in the earth. And yeah, so that's how come certain areas you have structures going back to pre-Columbus Day, and because the Indians knew that this was a place where they could supercharge their kachinas, their deities, their cocoa for their invokings. And that's what we have. That's another reason how we have so much UFO activity, and we have the missing here, and we have so many occultists that come here. And for those, that, well, Santa Fe is, New Orleans is going to claim this, Los Angeles is going to claim that, but I'm going to say that Santa Fe, in certain aspects, is the most haunted city in the USA. And the area around Santa Fe bet money on it.
Well, I'm thinking because the Santa Fe Trail itself, people don't realize a lot of people would use it to on their way out to California. I mean, so it saw a lot of, how can I tell you, history. I mean, a lot of people used it. It wasn't just the people that lived there.
Right. Well, yeah, and the history that, for example, Santa Fe gets the best and the worst of people that, you know, of the world that come to Santa Fe. It's,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and it doesn't have to be even paranormal or stories about ghosts on over here. Santa Fe, this is where world history changed. Of all the places in the world, it's Santa Fe. This is where Soviet spies stole the secrets to the atomic bomb in 1945,
Wow.
the Manhattan Project. This is hallowed ground for the KGB. This is their greatest victory of all time over Uncle Sam. It happened here in Santa Fe. You have all kinds of things, be it historical that you can prove, or things from the paranormal that people say, yeah, sure, I'm from Missouri, show me. No, I
Right.
mean, yeah, you name it, it happens here in Santa Fe. For example, gosh, I'm going to say how many months? About 4.5 months before the Tate LaBianca murders,
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Manson and the gang were here in town. Let's see what else here.
Really, I
You
didn't
name it.
know that. I didn't know that because you always hear everything about them having California. Everything was in L.A.
Right. Well, you see, Santa Fe was the Haight-Ashbury of the Southwest. Haight-Ashbury, for those who don't know, was the commune area of San Francisco in the 1960s. So you had all kinds of communes here, and you had, yeah, dirt poor hippies, and you had some very, very wealthy ones here with their followers. And again, too, more about, conspiracy Santa Fe here, is they're always talking about sunshine acid, LSD, and that is an acid. Do you want me to go down that story there, or do you want to go
Yeah,
back
yeah,
to before?
whatever, sure.
Oh, okay. Well, sunshine acid is was a drug that's going to try to eliminate your tendencies to do things. In other words, it's going to be like the Manchurian candidate type of drug. In other words, you take this and you will be more easily manipulated to do this, to do that, that you wouldn't want to do. And they're going to say that sunshine acid drug was sold in Los Angeles,
Right.
and that the people that made it, well, they were financed by the CIA, and the people that were running it, they had mysterious deaths. And they're going to say the first, how do you say, mass experiment to see how well this is, and getting people to be, well, docile slave. Am I breaking up on you? Can you
No,
hear me
no, no,
okay?
you're fine. You're good.
Okay. Would be Woodstock in August '69. Oh yeah, okay. Well, they released that on over there, and that was part of their experiment. However, the first how do you say prototype trial runs in small quantities. Where did that happen? Santa Fe, New Mexico. See, Santa Fe has all kinds of things going on in from, okay, MK Ultra, gosh, to CIA, FBI, spies, ghosts, UFOs, you name it, it happens on
It's
here in
happened
Santa
there,
Fe.
huh?
Yeah, I mean, I love this town. It's like being a fan of the Cleveland Indians. I mean, you can't get any
Yeah,
better than that.
exactly. Yeah, you've got whatever it is, whatever flavor you're looking for, you're going to find it there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about this. So yeah, so Santa Fe is, if you really want to start digging on into it, it's up to its neck in paranormal haps, to conspiracy type of stuff like you'd find in a Graham Greene novel, or like in that movie Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart. Everything goes on in the casino and in the bar.
Right. Yeah, it's the center. And see, and it's that question: what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Did all these things, the crossroads was there because of maybe certain energies that are already there to begin with?
Bingo! Give yourself a cigar. Give that woman a cigar.
Yay!
Yes, the energies on over here are were here before humans got here. In other words, you have okay, the ground, okay, there's an energy on over. A lot of people say, well, it's got to be the light because that's how come there's so many artists that come on over here and they say that the light always changes. Well, that's true. The light is always changing here, and that's how come you have the land of Buena Vista, the land of good views and Disney-esque type of sunsets. But an energy, light, there's different vibrations to it if you want to really get into the metaphysical or into, PhD type of level of religion, etc., of what sounds evoke, and then colors. You have different types of sound qualities, and the sound of the spheres, and the, or I should say, the music of the spheres. And then with this energy here, it's going to be drawing the very best and the very worst. And it was one of the things that I do in lectures or even future podcasts on tours. A lot of people don't know what Santa Fe means. And you, of course, you're Latina, so I'm Latino,
Mm-hmm.
and Cubana is Santa Fe. For those who don't speak Spanish, it's going to mean holy faith. And the Spaniards got here. They found out this is one of these wonderful places in the world where if you do your prayers, within 5 minutes you're going to be feeling the wonderful energy of Big G, the angels,
Mm-hmm.
around you in your orations. And then for modern times, in the 1960s, we had some very wicked people from Hollywood. Yes, Hollywood.
Yes.
And they came on up here. And of course, who is there? They're not going to the white light. They're going to the dark energies, the evil ones, the evil one, and they're Luciferians. And what do they find out now? What's their holy faith? Okay, well, and they find out that the telephone line works both ways. So that's how come we have the very best and the very worst coming out over. Santa Fe is, even going back to Wild West days, you go into the archives and they're going to say, wow, this is the noisiest town that there is with all the bells ringing because of all the churches here. Yeah, but nowadays, I mean, it's you're going to have, you name it, every variety of darkness here in this town. I mean, it's well, I mean, you're not going to find that in any other place in the world of what you've got here. I mean, as far as different types of light or negative spiritualists or spiritualities.
Right. Well, when you said that thing about Hollywood, weren't there certain even they filmed a lot of movies, or didn't they have sets out there also?
Yeah, yeah. Many different sets they filmed. There's still some sets here and outside of town. The Eves Ranch, the Bonanza Ranch. And one of the things, unfortunately, is that if you see some of the movies that were filmed here in the 40s, 50s, or 60s, you're going to get great panorama
Mm-hmm.
of the area outside of Santa Fe. But now you can't do that because a lot of these hills, mountains have been bought by the extremely wealthy. And, of course, you're going to see a modern house up on that hill. For example, if you ever see the movie Hang 'em High, that Clint Eastwood Western.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, that's filmed right outside of Santa Fe.
Really?
And the panorama that you see in that movie, you can't do that nowadays because of the houses up in the mountains or in the hills.
It
For
doesn't
example,
quite fit in. You have to CG them out, do some CG work.
well, no, you don't do that. What they do is they just do a different camera angle. I was on this one terrible movie. What was it? It was called, I shouldn't even give it credit. It was a Western. It was, well, there was a couple of them. One was, I guess it was, what was it called? Return to Lonesome Dove. And,
I know. I've heard of that. Yes.
Okay, I got fired off of that one, and I got there was another one called Wanted, Dead, or Unalive, whatever. No, anyway, the point being about this is these movies, westerns, were they couldn't use the pan that Don Siegel or whoever shot the movie in '68, or other people used Delmer Davies in other movies, like in Cowboy in '58. You cannot use that anymore because of the glare of the windows and roofs up in the mountains on over there. So
That's gonna ruin the.
Yeah.
Yeah, that this is back in the 1800s. Look is gonna be gone. Yeah, yeah. You know what? And what was it? The other day I was watching this old John Wayne movie, Stagecoach, which is kind of a well known, and it has a lot of the you see this little stagecoach traveling through this panoramic view of the desert and the monument. I think it's Monument Valley or something.
Yeah.
So I understand kind of what you're saying, that these areas that there was nothing out there when they shot the movie, they could do it because it was just the middle of nowhere, and they probably, if they had to reshoot that film, it'd be like not maybe the way
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah, they did that movie out in Utah, and there's some areas there that are still going to, how do you say, be part of a national park, so you're safe there.
Mm-hmm.
But the other parts, yeah, you're not gonna. And that's one of the bad things about this. I mean, there's good and bad. I mean, I've met a lot of wonderful people that have moved here, and I've met a lot of bad people that have moved here. But yeah, nothing ever. One of the things our culture is that things are always going to stay the same. No, they're not going to stay the same.
No.
And things change, people move on in, and it's never going to be like it was with the old days. Like there's places that I used to be able to go explore, ghost towns and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like this. I cannot get to anymore because either they've been knocked on down or they're on private property, and the heiress to XYZ fortune has all these guards there.
Yeah.
I'm telling you about the creepiness here. Oh, and I'm gonna make this place sound like it's the pit of hell. No, it's not. It's a wonderful place. I strongly our mayor, forget about him, Alan Weber. I mean, he's sent curses his way. I mean, he's one of the things about that was and I guess I shouldn't get into politics, but you mentioned something just triggered about this guy about the wrecking of our pinnacle, our obelisk,
Okay.
in the middle of our city. But I want to get back to sinister type of stuff, other type of sinister things. For example, outside of Santa Fe to the southwest, this is where the Zorro Ranch was. This is where
Okay.
Epstein was. Epstein, the Lolita Express.
Yes, that's right. That's right. He
Yes.
had the that ranch or something out there, right?
Right, yeah. And so again, too, I mean, of all the places where to drop anchor and have his, well,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
it's whatever you
yeah,
want.
yeah. Well, the thing about that's more sinister than that. It's not only blackmailing politicos for what goes
Mm-hmm.
on there with underage women there, but he's also involved with another group that they're trying to build a silicon body, and they're trying to get the life force to be transferred into that silicon body. So these people of the likes of like Gates and Musk and
Mm-hmm.
these type of characters can be immortal and live in this world and
Almost
live
like a
like God.
Frankenstein kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's what this is all about. Now, and I'll tell you something else here too. This is there's something about this. You see, this has been going on for longer than we think. If you go to this movie, see Stanley Kubrick, the famous director, he got in
Yes.
a lot of trouble, and maybe he was wiped on out after he tried to expose what's going on with the Illuminati.
Right.
With the
Right.
movie.
And a lot of people have commented on that.
Okay, well, if you watch that movie, Eyes Wide Shut, you're
Mm-hmm.
probably going to say, oh, it's not a very good movie. But if you know what he's trying to do as far as showing you the aspects of the Illuminati, you say to yourself, wow, this is a wonderful movie. And if you go into it ignorant, you're not going to know what he's getting at. In other words, you got to have a little bit of a base foundation. Okay, well, we talked about Epstein, and I don't believe that he was suicided. I think he was murdered inside the jail there in New York because he did, he's going to spill the beans of it so he could get a lighter sentence. Well, anyway, in Kubrick's movie Lolita, that's a movie. It was made like in '62 or '63,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about an underage girl with older men, that type of movie. Where does Lolita end up in? At a ranch outside of Santa Fe.
Are you kidding me?
Go onto YouTube and watch the movie or see a clip of it. In other words, James Mason is talking to the actress who plays Lolita, the Lolita, and and where did you go after this with Peter, the Peter Sellers character? And she talks about, there was this ranch outside of Santa Fe, and artists and wealth, all this kind of stuff. So you say to yourself, see, there's Santa Fe. It's like a wedding cake of so many layers, and it goes back decades and decades of.
Yeah, it's just that people lose that thread, like what you
Yes.
just pointed out. That people, because it's happened, that connection, so many years have gone by.
Yeah. And yeah, back in the '60s, all kinds of things were happening here. Uh, Again, too, is debaucherous, but in a different way. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, where again, too, depending on which, if you're with the good or with the bad, and the mixture and the energy here, and the people that come here. Yeah, there was people from big wheels inside the rock and roll business that were here with their communes and followers and all kinds of stuff, be it from Mama Cass to Mackenzie of Mamas and Papas. I forget what his
Mm-hmm.
first name was. Yeah. So yeah. So drug dealing, the steering of America the wrong way with Luciferianism, Island of Dr. Moreau, and now we're that much more advanced because of what we have with cloning or
Yes.
with gene splicing. And then with that, we also have the phenomena of cattle mutilation here.
Yes.
Uh, that's uh, you name it, it happens here in Santa Fe. And I've gotten us way off ghost.
Well,
I'm
no,
sorry there.
and you know what? No, no. It's a matter of fact that I'm going to interject this because you mentioned Epstein. Even though this is a little, today was it? Yeah, today they. I don't know if you're familiar with that gentleman by the name of John McAfee. That back in the '80s he developed the McAfee virus protector. To make a long story short, the guy was a really weird, unusual. It was like this guy was a mind his own legend. He lived a very unusual life, traveled around the world. Make a long story short, about 2 years ago, they arrested him in Spain, and the United States have been trying to extradite him for, of all things, tax evasion. It reminds you of the oh my God, this gangster guy. Shoot, my mind just went
Al
blank on him.
Capone?
Al Capone. What was it, yesterday or a couple of days?
I know
The
where this is going. I know what you're going to say.
he
That
killed
tell no tales.
himself.
Well, I
They,
don't think he did.
well,
But
no,
yeah, they're
no,
going to
but
say,
you know what? It's really funny because now they're already calling it he Epsteined himself.
yeah,
It's when like the pulp culture thing. It's already Epstein's already acquired that Epstein, as in sure he committed suicide. Uh huh. Okay. Yeah, we'll go with that.
yeah. No, this guy, Mac, whatever his name was, he had too many cards to play to get himself a better deal, and the
That's what I've
offed
heard.
him. Yeah,
That's what I've
and the
heard.
offed him to. Yeah, it's. That's what they'll do, and that's what they did to Epstein. And I'm really surprised that his cohort, Lady Galine, is
Hmm.
still alive.
Let me tell you something. They're keeping her under wraps. I haven't heard much about her. And
Okay.
I would think she would know, for lack of a better word, where the bodies are buried. And I think that, I don't know. It makes you wonder, did they bring her in more for her own safety, more than she maybe even thinks? Because some of these people, I'm thinking that in those circles, you could be very well protected until the one day that you being alive is more of a liability than it's worth. And all of
Right.
a sudden, that protection is not there anymore.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't heard anything else about her. But that when you said that thing about Epstein and this thing happened with John McAfee, and supposedly they were saying same thing. This man that said, "Hey, I'm not." He said it. I'm not going to kill myself. I'm not suicidal. Um, and you could tell they said his personality and everything was. He didn't look like this depressed guy who's any minute. And oh, there you go, hung himself in his cell in Spain. There you go.
Yeah.
What a too bad. What's that thing? Dead men tell no tales.
Yeah. That's what it comes on down to, and you say to yourself, okay. I mean, all right, Jose. Okay, Juan. You're here, and you're going to get double bonus pesos here,
Yeah.
or whatever. And you just
Right.
stay there on that stool there, and
Yeah.
you watch him, and nothing bad's going to happen
Right.
on over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Exactly. And
yeah.
that's. I don't know. They're going to investigate this. So yeah. Okay. If it's anything like the investigation that's supposedly done with Epstein, it's like that's not going to go anywhere quickly.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even in the United States. This was in Spain. So. Yep.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think.
That's
So, but getting back to your original thing that you said about Epstein, and that he had that ranch out there, because everybody always focuses and just remembers the island. And they don't realize that he had more than one place that he was using.
Well, yeah. You see, there's all kinds stories on over here about who came on over here and what
Hmm.
was going on, and they talk about Billy Jeff Clinton and him on the Lolita Express.
Right.
Well, yeah. Well, 30 some times. Well, how about the Zorro Ranch? Okay, and I'll go on some other one. There was this one. Now, again, too, this is where there's smoke, there's fire. But there was
Yes.
this. I'll tell you, there was this other movie that yeah, it really got chopped to pieces. It had a great potential, and it was called Love Ranch, and it was kind of well, it was a story kind of based on fact of doings in Nevada at a bunny ranch back in the mid '70s. This is the Oscar Bonavena story, the boxer who fought Muhammad Ali, the Argentine. Anyway, the thing about this is during that time, there's stories about Billy Jeff Clinton, and he's having an affair, and he's having another affair, and where's he at? And I thought to myself, okay, well, and all these stories, you understand about the Zorro Ranch and about Lolitas, and so if you
Yes.
dig into that, and there were some other high-profile characters there at that time. So the islands, the tip of the iceberg. What they should have done is gone into this area here, and yeah, literally, the rose garden is littered with bodies.
That's right. Looks real pretty on the outside, like on the top, but then
Yeah,
yeah, but yeah, and it's what, and I've heard talk about this in other areas where certain places, just like you said, the good and the bad, but when the bad shows up, it's like, damn. And then when you research or you tie in, this and this, and you see, well, there's a pattern here.
yeah,
There's something here that brings these type of people in for some reason.
yeah. The very best and the very worst, and that's what we got here. And there to the west of the Lolita Zorro Ranch is some ruins
Okay.
that go back before, to Columbus era and then beyond that. And
Mm-hmm.
again, to all kinds of stories about blood rites from those ruins. And so again, too, what are they invoking? And the energy was still here, and it's getting modern day people that are, perhaps, getting, and I do believe this because what we see now with our, Biden and the gang and the rest of these people is that the upper crust, you can call them Illuminati or whatever, but they're
Mm-hmm.
not that smart. But they're able to wreck our economy, and they're able to try to shape our society. And it's as if they're getting instructions from off-world intelligence. Because you look at Mao, you look at Joe Stalin. I mean, these guys, these guys are peanut sized intellectually compared to Joe Stalin and Mao. But but yet they're able to do all what they're doing right now. It just doesn't make sense. It's like they're getting a beam of intel from, like I say, some Luciferian energy from off planet.
Yeah, or like they say, the power behind the throne kind of deal. It's not what it looks like. Almost like the Wizard of Oz.
Right.
There's something really going on behind the scenes that which is really running the show. And I think most it's pretty apparent to most people, and it's some people. Unfortunately, it's like hang on tight for the ride because it seems like you know, and I want to say, in getting back, as a matter of fact, that stagecoach movie, at the end, the cavalry rides in and saves everybody. And I think a lot of people in real life are waiting for that moment, not realizing that's not the way it works. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. You're going to have to be the cavalry yourself.
Second Amendment, baby. Second
Yes.
Amendment. Yes.
Yes.
People
Yes.
out there, the cavalry, you are the cavalry. You're going
Right.
to have to save the day yourself.
As a
And
matter of fact, what was it? A couple of days ago, I heard that Smith and Wesson passed $1 billion year of sales. $1 billion.
mhm,
That's a lot of
yeah,
money, and that's driven mostly. I want to say, I hate to say it, but it's fear. Okay, this is not just driven by people buying weapons for hunting, for example. Like, hey, no, unfortunately, I think it's fueled because a lot of people are scared. They're scared. They're seeing things that scare them, and they're like, you know what? Maybe I've never owned a firearm before in my life, but I can't take any chances with myself, my safety, the safety of my family, and that's a shame because we shouldn't have to live with that kind of fear, you know.
Hmm.
Especially nowadays in the United States. Come on.
Yeah. Well, with them, with the powers that be, that they're emasculating the police
Yeah.
department,
Yes.
and they're letting like our monument there in the plaza be destroyed.
Right. You mentioned
Uh,
something that they destroyed one of your that you
yeah,
guys had
yeah.
something there. How old was that monument, by the way?
It goes back to 1866, and it's to
Wow.
commemorate the Civil War. There was this battle that was fought outside of Santa Fe, and they used to, well, they call it the Gettysburg of the West. Have you ever seen that movie, that Shoot 'Em On Up, the Clint Eastwood movie with Lee Van Cleef, and
Yes.
it's called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly?
Of course.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's based upon the battle that was fought outside of Santa Fe. So
Okay.
that obelisk was there, and it also commemorated the American soldiers that fought uh, uh, against the American Indians with the wagon trains. So up until 19, I'm going to say, they say 74, but it was, I think, 71 when this happened. I was around when that happened. There was a plaque, and it said to the soldiers that fought the savage Indians. Well, people said, oh, well, savage, that's too tough. So they took that away, and
Okay.
that was chiseled on out. That was taken away. But I mean, yeah, you look at it. They were savage. I mean, call it like it is. I mean, there was. Uh, has not anybody ever heard of La Comancheria, the kingdom of the
Yes.
Comanche? I mean, they're
Yes.
raising hell not only with the whites, but with other American Indians. You have the wars between the Navajo and the Utes. Yeah, you
Right.
have, and I'm like I told you at the beginning of the show. I'm a breed. I'm Apache, and yeah. So I mean, this type of stuff of this PC, politically correct. So you get these outsiders who come on in, and then we got this worthless garbage as a mayor, Alan Weber, who's from Portland, Oregon. He was the right-hand man of that pedophile Goldschmidt, who was a mayor of Portland and one of the high-ranking people of the Carter administration, and he was the one
Mm-hmm.
that was raping that 13 to 17-year-old girl. It was a terrible thing. Well,
Right.
anyway, yeah. Well, anyway, so the outsiders come on in, and they say we got to get rid of this statue. And of course, we're thinking
That
that
have been there for over 100 years.
yeah, 162 years. And then the police are saying no, and then the mayor, El Wimpo, says, "Stand down, police." And then que vergüenza, they topple the statue with ropes and everything on else. Now the
Yeah.
police should have stopped them. Now back in 1970, when we tried this once before, but this was not as well financed with the Soros people, etc. Here, I mean, yeah, the Santa Fe police went out there. There was tear gas, and hey man, you want to rumble? Here we are, and they even canceled the fiesta. So yeah, that's what's going on here. I mean, we got. I don't even know how we got into
Well, no, you
whatever
know what? Because we're
happened.
talking about all the unusual things, and you know what? Sometimes it's like, because see, like you said, you've lived there. Your family, your origins are from there, so you know all the stories behind the stories, the backstory to the stories. You
Yeah.
really know what's going on.
It sounds like we're at a
Which
bar drinking here. Going all over the place. We're supposed to go to the ghost.
say
Okay.
we're
Yeah.
going all over the place. I'll tell you what. What was? I'm gonna because I don't know where to. I know
Go
you've
ahead. I mean,
mentioned
if
to
you're
me.
enjoying this,
I love it.
if I get, okay, well
But
then
you
we'll
know
stay
what?
with it.
Where else is there left to go except UFOs or cryptids? So,
Oh, okay.
and you know
Well,
why I'm
let's.
saying this? Because I know that there's UFO sightings out there, and I've spoken to a lot of people that either are have an interest in the cryptid field and or UFOs, and they've said that they've seen after a while when they track these sightings that they dovetail with UFO sightings, sometimes coincide with more sightings of cryptids of different types. And I was
Right.
wondering if you had come across anything like that.
Yes. And there's an area east of Santa Fe. The slang name for it is the Pecos Triangle, and that's where people disappear, vanish into
Oh,
thin air. And okay, we got UFO. We've got people saying that there's something on out there, like gosh, reptoid or snake or something on out there.
really?
Other people saying, well, okay, well, every now and then, they've seen something. The Bigfoot sightings that was pretty much stopped decades ago, but there was, gorilla-like sightings before there was even Bigfoot on up there, or before
Okay.
the term Bigfoot came on up. There was a track found out there back like in the early 50s and all kinds of things. But the point being about this is, I'm going to give a plug to this one guy. This Frenchman his name is Robert. Oh no, his name is Lionel Camy, Camy, and he just released a documentary on
Mm-hmm.
the triangle, and it features me quite a bit.
Okay.
So what we do not get into on this show, look on up, and it's in English subtitles, Lionel Camy, Pecos Triangle, and
Okay.
that'll go into more of the missing. But the thing about this is, on out there, you get UFO sightings, you get missing people, and one is linked to another. You've got cattle mutilation, but I mean, these missing people are something that even Rod Serling wouldn't be able to get away with.
Right.
I'll give you this one story of this, and you're going to see on my. Let me give you my website: Santa Fe Ghost and History Tours.com. Santa Fe Ghost and History Tours.com. You can go onto that. It's over 200 some pages. You're going to see me searches, investigation, doing all kinds of stuff where people have vanished into thin air. And there's books that you can get on, go to my website and buy them concerning phenomena like this, etc. Okay, there was this guy, I think he's going to be about, 9, 10 years ago. His name is Mel Nadel. And you can Yahoo him, you can Google him,
Okay.
and he's one of these guys who just disappeared into thin air. And the thing about this is it's early September, and he goes on up to the base area of the triangle. It's really not a triangle, but we like triangles. It's going to be like a squashed oval. How far it extends, that's debated, etc. But anyway, him and his buddies go hunting, and they set up their tents, and he says, "You guys go knock yourself on out. I'm going to build a blind, and if something shows on up, I'll
Mm-hmm.
take it on out." So, as I talk about that, my phone just falls off the table right here. We're channeling something over here. Okay, been nice knowing you.
It's like, okay, let's change the subject.
Anyway, so the two guys get back at dusk, and Mel's vehicle's still there. No Mel. They crank off some rounds. No response. They turn on the lights, the horns, everything else, and Mel doesn't come to the camp. So they've got to go to the ranger station and file a missing report, and then get the state police. And I'm going to say this is like the third or fourth largest search in New Mexico history. You have
Okay.
professionals, amateurs, Cessnas, Huey helicopters, Blackhawks, etc. And they find Mel's tracks right away. And Mel's tracks go roughly, this is important, roughly about 120 yards away from the camp. And they just truncate.
Hmm.
There's no mountain lion prints. There's no bear prints in the area. There's no spent casings. There's no sign of a struggle. This is 9 or 10 years ago. And since that time, no bone or no clothing of his has been found, and none of his accounts have been touched. And that's just one of many people that vanish on up in this area here. Now, one of the things that is, okay, we can talk about dimensional door, UFO,
Right.
and one of the things that Cami brought on up, and I don't like to go down that road about this here, but okay, when he vanished, it was going to be the date was going to be 696, and of course, the way the French do it with Nostradamus, they're going to always
Mm-hmm.
have, reverse one, reverse the second letter, reverse the second number. That's part of the code. And when did he disappear? on the day of 666.
Oh, that's right. Because if you reverse it, yes, I see what you mean.
And now there's another person that happened to on another. Yeah, well, anyway, point being about that is you know, the suspects are many. I mean, what is it? Is it a doorway to hell? Is it a doorway to another dimension? Is it UFO? Is it uh,
Right, because normally you would think, well, if they would have found some type of either, because you hear sometimes people disappearing and then their remains eventually are found.
right?
They find skeletal remains or they find something, or like what you said, you see some type of there was predation. Some animal got them and dragged them off,
Right.
and what was left of them, then the scavengers did away with it. But you still have some clue, like this is what happened to this poor guy.
Well, here's the thing: is I was my last investigation on up here for him. Not only did I have digital, but I took a 35 millimeter, and I ended on up with my cell phone acting on up. I mean, I was getting all of these telephone messages on my cell phone when I was up there in the area where Mel disappeared. In other words, there's this dirt road and there's
Mm-hmm.
the campsite, etc. Anyway, it got so bad that my phone fried. The people said, "I don't know what happened to your cell phone." Okay, so cell phone, everything's out, but I still got my 35 millimeter. Okay, so I take pictures of that area, and when it's developed in that area, the pictures become darker and darker and darker. Now he has some of them up on the website, that Lionel Cami, and then they change and they go lighter and lighter. So people can say, "Well, Alan, you know what? Your settings were off, or it was bad film." Well, maybe, maybe not. But how come it was just in this area where the
Right.
everything went to darker color, so that it was noir? It was just complete black. Some of these photos there in that area. You see, that's the power. That's the energy of that area there.
Right. And and I hate to say it, but sometimes the most basic, like a camera, like you say that you just took, you had your digital camera. Sometimes they capture stuff that other equipment fails to pick up on. You
Well,
know that?
everything went wrong with my other stuff. So not only had my old reliable 35 millimeter, so I was taking pictures with the 35, and
Mm-hmm.
that, as I said, it malfunctioned. But then when we got out of there and took some more photos, they're fine. And of course,
Isn't
you can
that
do this when
weird?
they're developed. Yeah, and of course, we're using all kinds of instruments. And you can say, "Well, Alan, some of these instruments, the batteries were weak." Well, I can't prove that. Some of them were strong, and look what happened, how they got drained. Yeah, I mean, our Jeep stalling on that dirt road, and then it's
Yeah.
smelling like it's going to explode. I mean, I turned to my pal. I says, "Has this ever happened before?" Because we weren't using my Jeep, we were using his Jeep. And he says, "No, Alan, this has never happened before. This smells like a gas bomb." I mean, what? I said, "Did you flood the?" "No, Alan, didn't flood the carburetor." Yeah, just really strange things happening on over there. And I'm going to be
Right.
going on up there to do another investigation in mid-July. Dig it. And
You
Marlena,
know,
you're invited, but you
I
got to
won't,
bring your own weapons.
I don't have a problem with that. I got my own. Don't worry. And I've got a concealed weapons permit to go with it. But
Okay.
let me tell you, and then I'm going to interject this real quick. And the reason why I say that is that right now they're televising, I want to say, is it the Travel Channel, History Channel, one of these, the Mysteries of Skinwalker Ranch. And it's, that area, that Skinwalker Ranch up in Utah was bought by a new guy. And he brought in a new team. To make a long story short, one of the anomalies that they've encountered is like when they go to certain areas, one of the one of the guys on there. I mean, they've had a different weird stuff. Is his phone goes berserk. It starts like just like basically just like if somebody was handling it or had access to it, going through different apps, it goes crazy, and it's happened more than once. And when you mentioned that thing about the phone, I was like, wow, what's going on here? Is there some correlation where certain areas, because of course Skinwalker Ranch is what it's notorious for is UFO sightings. Um, what is it that maybe I don't know, some type of magnetic or God, who knows what type of energy or that we fail to recognize affects electronics.
The correlation. Okay, here's the correlation. Very, very good. Okay, here's the thing. There's going to be this Stargate, this or portal or portales or something on up there that opens and closes and moves around up there at the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. The same thing is there in the triangle, and that's how come we get these shades, we get these UFOs, dimensional beings, whatever you want to call it or categorize it, and that's what we have with that. And then that's going to go into the jinn. I'm going to say that there's this doorway that the jinn, there's, depending on translation, 5 or 6 different tribes of the jinn. Okay, the skinwalkers, that's going to be one of the tribes of the jinn. And for example, they'll throw something your way, and all of the Latinos are going to disagree with me violently, but they're going to say that La Llorona is a jinn.
Isn't that okay? Let's go down that rabbit hole right now,
Ah,
Alan. Let's go down that rabbit hole.
Okay, yes, okay.
Because I mentioned to you once that La Llorona, it has a kind of like it has different sources. You get different stories as to what the origins of La Llorona is. But I want to hear how you come up with that. And I'm not saying no, on the contrary.
Okay. Well, La Llorona, freely translated, means the crying woman. Okay. Now, this is not to be confused with that apparition that was warning Emperor Montezuma II that the Spaniards are on their way across the ocean to topple the empire. That's something completely different. We're talking about a lethal entity, a lethal energy.
Okay.
Now, La Llorona is a shapeshifter, just like what the jinn are. The jinn are transformers. They're shapeshifters. When you see her far away, she's going to look like a beautiful Hollywood starlet. Up close, she's looking like a ravaged hag from hell. And as far as this area goes, okay, La Llorona has been seen and heard southern Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, Mexico. A ghost does not have that kind of travel radius. What does a jinn? And it even says in the Quran and the Mohammedan books that after the jinn lost their war against the angels, that there was these doorways that move around, and that the jinn can come into this world, and they're the enemies of humanity. And that's what I'm saying, that this La Llorona, they're going to say it's this woman, it's her spirit who killed her 2 kids, and then she suicided. I'm going to say, well, all right, that's fine. That happened. But you're misidentifying this force as this woman who did that. This is not a ghost. This is not the ghost of Maria. This is a shapeshifter who you're giving the history of what happened here in Santa Fe to this jinn. And that's what we have with this jinn. And since, since 9/11, and before that, people, I shouldn't, okay, I'm gonna, because I don't want to give people ideas about this, but, all right, a lot of people have been making deals with, we got into the dark areas of Mohammedanism, and they want to make deals with these energies, the jinn, and that's one of the things that's been happening since we got involved in the Middle East, just by osmosis, people hearing about this, I want to cut a deal, I want to do this. Just like with what we have a lot of the, for lack of better words, los gringos, los gabachos in Mexico, they hear about Huchipotle, and they want to do deals with that with their drug deals here. Okay, so, for example, you go onto the YouTube and you see, the second tower coming down on 9/11, you look in the smoke, and you're going to see a jinn coming on out in the smoke there. It's going to be like something out of the Wizard of Oz. It's kind of odd that you mentioned that, from 1939, of, I'm the Great Oz.
Exactly.
And you're going to see the Oz character with the curtain and the flames. You look at the smoke of that tower coming down, and you're going to see a jinn.
Wow. I gotta look at that again.
Okay, do that, and you're going to, do the right. The camera has to be. I don't know. I forget if it's from which side, which direction of the compass it is. But as you see it coming on down and the smoke going on up, you're going to see this character who looks demonic. With the ears, the nose, the eyes, etc. You know, flattened top head. It has a little bit of a curve on it, oblong head, and the smoke going on up.
And the truth is, I mean, I haven't looked at it because, watching that makes me very sad, even though it happened. Difficult to believe 20 years ago. And we're coming up
Yeah,
on the anniversary, so I haven't looked at it for a long time because, like I said, it makes me very, very sad. It makes me
yeah.
cry, to be honest with you. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at that.
See, a lot
Um,
was unleashed that we don't know about
hmm
uh, by people that are messing around with the dark arts, and that's one of the things about the wars in the Middle East, the greed. Some of these people. I mean, you look at who they're attached to and who their money people are. Modern day politicians. I mean, attached to. Well, look at the House of Windsor. You look at the that banking family from France. You look at
Yes.
the Rockefellers. You look at all
hmm
of the stuff that they've been involved in, as far as how to say dark energies. It's amazing. So you say to yourself, well, okay, let's they want power. This outside force wants this power. They want to control from the top of the pyramid. So they're turning the Americans and the rest of the world into sheeple.
Well, what a lot of people say is that, people that engage in this type of like quid pro quo with whatever you want to call it, demons, jinn, you can name anything you want. You don't get something for nothing, in other
Right.
words. And a lot of times, I've heard that sometimes that they they say even in Hollywood, for example, a lot of people that lose their children, like to weird deaths or suicide, like disproportionately high, um, is because it's almost like that's one of the um,
Deals. Yeah.
the deals that you make when you go into this. And it's really funny because we talked about this earlier, Rosemary's Baby, and what is the entire theme of Rosemary's Baby was
Right.
that he would basically this guy, this director, which was Rosemary's husband, made a deal basically offering his wife up in exchange for being famous.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
And here's some of the stuff about that. We talk about timeline on over here, and we don't have time to get into time tunnel or time being stopped outside of this world or this kind of stuff on over here.
Mm-hmm.
But we talked about Lolita, the ranch outside of Santa Fe, 1963, and then the Epstein Ranch, the Lolita Ranch later on. Well, for example, where that woman falls onto the sidewalk and is killed in the movie, you
Right.
just go X amount of feet over, and that's where John Lennon got killed and murdered.
Really?
Yeah, at the what's the name? The Dakota,
Yeah, the
Dakota.
Dakotas, I think it's called, or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And of course, Yoko Ono is a witch. She's doing all kinds of incantations. As far as Roman Polanski, yeah, I mean the
Oh,
guy
him.
is
Let's
a
forget it.
pedophile,
He's a pedophile.
bad guy, Satanist. His wife Sharon Tate was a Satanist. She got what do you call it? It's not. It's, there's a word for it. It's where you join the cult. That happened
Mm-hmm.
in England in 1967 in that movie called The Devil's Eye or the
No,
Eye.
the needle, Eye of the Needle, or something like that, right?
Yeah, something like that. It's with I think it's the Eye of the Devil. Or some, anyway, it's
Eye
a
of the
creepy movie.
Devil. Eye of the Devil.
Okay, and yeah, and then of course how she dies later on. In other words, they're always going to try to put Sharon Tate as this lily white, innocent Snow
Right.
White. No, I mean she was she was, you know, a gamer to get ahead and do what it took in
Well,
Hollywood.
even
And
the
Roman
role that she
Polanski,
played in Value of the Dolls,
yeah.
it was it was a dark. If you look at the film in and of itself, when Jacqueline Susan did that novel, I mean, there was a lot of truth in it, but it was a very dark kind of a film.
Well, I was really surprised when that came on out, and I was surprised at how it went. And it wasn't, how do you say, there's ways of doing darkness, right, to make it an interesting story. On that
Yeah,
one, after you see that one back in '67, you say, I got to go take a shower.
yeah. And you have to understand, people have to think of it, what we were talking about, in context of the years when it was released. Nowadays we see some of the stuff and we're like, oh, okay. But back then, that was like, huh?
Yeah.
That was like very gritty or too truthful, and yeah, that people don't realize that 50 or 40 years ago, that kind of film, or the subject matter, the way it was treated.
Yeah. It was treated in it didn't glamorize anything. It was
No.
okay, in your face, and
Yes.
they got away with as much as it could back in '67. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and you have some actresses in there that you think, wow, I'm used to them in a wholesome role, and look what they're portraying right here. Ugh.
Right. Well,
And
and now that you say that, you remember, I'm sure you've heard of Jane Mansfield, what happened with her when she
yeah,
had that accident, that, like, pretty horrific.
well, here's the story. But okay, I'm gonna give you the punchline on this one here. Maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't. Okay,
Okay.
she was a Satanist herself too.
Right, that's
She
what I
went
heard. Yeah.
she went the wrong road, and she and Sammy Davis Jr. and others became part of the Anton LaVey Temple of Set, or House of Seti, whatever it was, that Devil's Den, Devil Church in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she made her deal, and Anton LaVey was, I forget what he was doing. He was casting, or he had just finished casting spells or whatever, and he's cutting a newspaper. And I forget why he's cutting the newspaper. If he wants to get words on out of it, titles, so he can burn them, or put words together and burn them for his invokings or whatever. And he's cutting, and then he turns around the paper of what he's cut, and what did he do? He had just cut off the head of Jane Mansfield from the body in an advertisement for her movie. And how does she die? She dies from decapitation outside of New Orleans in that car accident.
Right. And you know what? Because I had heard the story, and this is the thing. You hear the story that who Anton LaVey was after was the guy, her boyfriend, who was, I don't know if he was a manager or something. And so the story I heard, which I think a lot of people have heard, was that Anton LaVey told her, stop hanging out with this guy. In other words, I'm going to do something against him, and if you're in the vicinity, you're going to get it. I think to myself, you're going to tell me that if supposedly Anton LaVey did something against this guy, I mean, they couldn't have been there 24/7, because it was a pretty horrific death. Her children were spared because they were asleep in the back seat of the vehicle.
Right.
But, her and this guy, it was a horrible death, the way they died in that car accident. Let me tell you, it leads me to believe that there was more to it than her just happening to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And
Yeah,
it sounds more plausible,
targeted.
like
Yeah.
what you said.
Yeah, the guy was targeted. She was there, and oops, he's casting all this stuff. I'm going to get her lover. I'm going to get her boyfriend. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then by accident, he says, he turns and I didn't mean to cut her, decapitate that picture of her. It was on the back page of the newspaper, and I'm cutting out all these titles because I want to make some sentences and then burn them and do my casting, or whatever it was, the story. And again, too, then other people say, well, no, that's not the inside baseball. He really was aiming for her as well, too. I don't think so, because he still coveted her.
Well, you know what? People don't realize that. That Mariska Hargitay from the
That terrible police show.
well, that's her daughter. They don't look
Yeah.
anything alike. That is Jane Mansfield's daughter.
Right.
But they don't realize that, of course, she has her dad's surname, and they don't look They don't look. She doesn't look. They don't look anything up. Alike when you at first glance. So people don't realize that that's her daughter. But yeah, the I think that there's more to it because I had heard that at some point that Jane Mansfield was being used as an altar, as a human altar,
Right.
when they were doing whatever their black masses or stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I mean, she was pretty deep into this. She wasn't out in the crowd, looking at what they were doing at the altar. She was the altar.
Well, yeah, well, here's something on else. For example, very underrated singer. I don't know if he's still alive, but he had a very good voice. Englishman, well, I guess he was born in India. Engelbert Humperdinck.
Yes, of
Okay,
course.
he bought Mansfield's mansion, and he had all kinds of problems with the spirit activity there.
Really, I never
Yeah.
heard that story. Wow.
I do investigations all over, my dear. You got to come. We got to go and
Yes,
do a
we do.
safari
We
one of these
do.
days.
We do.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you something. I had never, I've heard of different things in certain houses in LA and those canyons where they've you hear kind of some weird stuff, but I had never heard that about Engelbert Humperdinck buying Jane Mansfield's. Wow.
Yeah.
And are you surprised? I am not.
No, I'm not because and Engelbert seemed to be a pretty good guy, so I can see how come that he would how do you say? Well, I mean, for that for that strata of human being, I mean, he wasn't as bad as the others, and he tried to do well. And with Jane Mansfield, what was it? There was a heart-shaped, like a Valentine heart pool that always gave him problems, and this wall that would kind of look like but with this one, I can maybe believe it, that sometimes it looked like it would be dripping blood.
Oh.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's going to be like third grade. But, you look at that kind of power of you've got these people that will do anything to gain notoriety, to gain fame, to gain money. So who knows just exactly what they tapped on into. Now, as far as Jane Mansfield go, in the few, how do you say, interviews, she came across as a nice person, but I mean, you just say to yourself, "Geez, Louise, just that it's too bad she went the wrong way." And there's other people that you say to yourself, "Well, you came across as a bad person in the interview, or the person that I met wasn't a very nice guy." And okay, so you're into this. Well, good riddance. I mean, just be
Right.
out of my way. And I mean, look at Sammy Davis Jr. and look at Madonna. I mean, for example, I mean, she had that in essence. Mendez black mass during the Super Bowl a number of years ago. I mean, yeah, it's right in your face, and people don't get it.
Right. And people, there's a lot of sometimes symbology, and people don't know how to interpret the symbols.
Yeah.
They just think of it as showbiz or, oh, that's so out there. That's whoa.
Or if I talk about Mendez, people aren't going to know that. That's going to be the Mr. Scratch in a with a devil's head. That's for those people, it's going to have the pentagram and the skull of the goat. That's the Mendez character. Remember the way that she was, people, in the way she posed at the beginning of her dance act and with the flames, etc. Anyway, so yeah, she was again too right in your face. She's bringing satanic energy
Symbology
there, just
into
like,
it.
for example, the I guess what was it? I'm trying to think of it. Altamont concert on December the 6th, 1969. Now they did a documentary on it with the Rolling Stones called "Give Me Shelter," but in essence, what that was just people went to go, have a good time, listen to music, but it was a disguised summoning of a Luciferian mass. This is where Mick Jagger's dancing around in his wizard see-through type of clothes, etc. And what's his name gets killed there in the audience. The Hell's Angels there is doing the security. Are you familiar with this one there, Em?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay. Well, there was this concert that was done in 1969 outside of San Francisco, and it was bigger than Woodstock, like minimum was 250,000. Thought
That's a lot of
400,000.
people.
Yeah, and it was at this drag racetrack. It's kind of like in this valley there in Altamont, California. So you had, in essence, basically a black mass there, and this is when the Rolling Stones really started getting dark and going into their music, a sympathy for the devil, this kind of stuff. So they
Mm-hmm.
got the Hell's Angels there as their security guards,
Okay.
and they also had Jefferson Airplane at the time before they went stars.
Right.
So all these groups on over there, and you had, gosh, a murder right in front of the stage there. You had some other deaths that well, were they murder? Yeah, it looks like they were, like 3 other people there in the crowd that were murdered. But you have, in the documentary, you can see this one guy, Hell's Angel, going after this other guy with a knife, and the other guy had a pistol. Yeah, it's really a wild thing. In other words, you had these bonfires. In other words, it's going to be like a disguised 1933 Nuremberg rally, but it's going to be for, in essence, invoking Lucifer.
So basically, what what you're also telling me that there was some type of human sacrifice disguised as violence. You know what I'm saying, between
Yeah.
individuals.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. I mean, you go to these things, and that's what you're getting. For example, we talked about what the movie was of Roman Polanski's
Mm-hmm.
Sacrifice, about what's going on here, and the deal making, and then what Roman Polanski did with his deal making, and for him to become this power broker, and then for him to have enough juice to not get extradited to the USA and still make movies, and
Yeah.
then for you have all these cream cheese brains. Well, they're not cream cheese; they're smart because
Yeah.
they've made their choice. The Salma Hayek's, whatever, and the Harrison Fords, and they'll say, "Oh, no, he's an artist. What he did, that's not rape." Well, she's 13 years old. I
Yeah.
mean, what?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And I'm thinking to myself, I imagine just about any man that moves in those circles of Hollywood and movies, you're gonna have to have women throwing themselves basically at your feet. Okay. So my point being that he had no need to get together with a 13-year-old. I'm sure he
right.
had more than if he wanted to get together with any woman.
Yeah,
Okay. Let's say you're one of these guys likes young women. You can't find a 19, 20, 21-year-old.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. I don't care, what how they want to slice it or dice it. It is what it is, and it's called pedophilia.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about that is you look at. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic or if you're going into Lutheranism or whatever it is. You're going to go on into what is the big no-no. You do not destroy innocence. You do not corrupt the young. I mean,
But
that's
there
one of
is
the things that.
something. It depends on what your agenda is.
Right. Well, if you're the good guy, you say you're not supposed to do that. But if you're a
Exactly.
bad guy and you're following the dark arts, then you want to destroy goodness. You want to wreck these people. And like, for example, getting back to this guy Goldschmidt, who was, yeah, I think he was even governor of Oregon, if not even a senator. He's having this affair with this 13-year-old, this 17-year-old, and she ends up afterwards just so destroyed. She's a druggie, and I don't know. She dies, and I would presume that it's going to be suicide because most people that happens, they just
Mm-hmm.
poison themselves with drugs and alcohol
Sure.
as a pacifier. And then we got his right-hand man being the mayor here in Santa Fe. He said, "Oh, I didn't know anything." Yeah, you SOB, you did know. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, anyway, but I'll get back to my name's Mud Value. But anyway, I tell it like it is. Anyway, getting back to Polanski on over here, look at the movies that he's done and
Yeah.
the awards that he's gotten, and you can just see how dark Hollywood is, and with what they give to us today.
Oh
It's
no,
just
I
it's
think, and when we
sugar-coated
talked
garbage.
about this, I think that a lot of people, I tell everybody says, the Exorcist, how everybody wigged out back in
Uh-huh.
'73 when the Exorcist came out, and I'm not gonna say, you know, I've, s- it is it's a very well-made horror movie, but I think that the people reacted the way they did. The notoriety of it is that overall, I think the American public were innocent. they were not prepared for the impact of that movie.
You're right. And one of the things about that, you're so right, because it's really a tame movie. I remember
Yeah.
that movie back in '73, and okay, with maybe the music and maybe the kitchen scene, that was kind of creepy, but everything on else, no. But of course, you see, a lot of Americans don't read their Bible or don't know about this, and again, innocent. Back then, gosh, uh, well, look at America. I mean, then it was. Uh, we believed in that if people had money, if people were leaders, they were going to be honest men, and we didn't.
No.
We never ever thought of that. That well, a lot of Americans never thought that evil, the devil, did exist, and
Right.
there was a lot of people that didn't know their Bible. But if you knew your Bible and you read it, you say, well, this is tame stuff to compare to what's in the Bible, and this is tame stuff to other things that has to do with with my background, Catholicism, and so you're right. It was a shocker because we were, gosh, infants or had gone to sleep and didn't know our stuff like the
No.
prior generations, let's say, that had been born in 1910, 1920.
Well, you know, the point I'm making is if now the same audience, the audience now, let's say, of the 21st century, with what all we've been exposed to in Hollywood as far as the graphic violence, you name it, whatever. You fast forward with The Exorcist, and it'd be like, huh, all right. So this kid gets possessed. All right, let's go eat at Denny's after the movies.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I remember people getting so damn sick afterwards.
Oh
I thought
my
to
God!
myself,
I heard of people running around, people throwing up, people
yeah,
fainting.
yeah,
I heard that the church rectories were being overrun because of people running to get their priest to like. People were bugging out like totally. And it wasn't only the crazies because there's always crazies. It was like everybody. Everybody was scared. I remember I was very young and I went to see it behind my mother's back, and I was wigged out. I was
okay.
because of course it was, and I don't know if there's something on a soul level also that recognized the truth in it, even though it was a fictional piece of work. How's that?
Well, that's very good, is because even the people that were, okay, how do you say, blind to anything or
Mm-hmm.
even very debaucherous,
Yes.
they saw a truth in it. I remember Johnny Carson on the old Johnny Carson show, him
Mm-hmm.
talking about it, and you could see how serious and how bothersome it was for him. And I thought to myself, well, gee, Johnny, I mean, you got all your mistresses and all this
Oh
stuff
yeah.
going on here, and you're and this is really bothering you. But it goes to show you just what part of his conscience was shut off, and then later on it comes out Johnny Carson was a lot worse than what even I thought he was, and with things about his private life and how he lived. But yeah, that even disturbed him. And this guy was, the one of
Right.
the king swingers of Hollywood.
Right. You
Yeah,
would think, hey, he'd seen it all.
yeah, and yeah, you're right. I remember people. And to me, it was no, it didn't. Again, too, I was. Well, yeah, but a lot of people it did affect, and I can remember for example, The Wild Bunch, and it's still a fantastic western, one of my favorites of all times. But I remember the big uproar about that. They said it was too much gratuitous violence. No, it wasn't. But yeah, you're right. America was completely different, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very hard to get that across because we're so jaded, we're so rusted, we're so
Yeah.
overcome with darkness nowadays.
Well, you know what? And we spoke about this before we record a little bit. But back into around, I want to say the 1970s, late 60s, 1970s really, is when you started seeing movies where the good guys didn't always win. The
Right.
movie ended with like somehow or other, the evil triumphed or the good person didn't. It was like before your movies, no matter how bad or how whatever, goodness triumphed and whether you want to call it unrealistic or not, I think it sinks into the subconscious of the country. So always you had this thing which was good, light, whatever, triumphs at the end, no matter how bad the bad is. And
You're
around that
absolutely right.
time was when they started making movies where that started going out. As a matter of fact, you see a lot of 1970 movies, and they always ended kind of on a downbeat, like
you're absolutely right. And I always thought to myself that ABC led the way on this. And ABC came on out with their own B movies. It was called the
Mm-hmm.
Movie of the Week.
Yes, I remember that,
And
of course.
and of course they had a lot of dark movies. And like I told you before, I got my old, I used to keep journals. I got some stuff dating way. I'm not gonna tell you how far back, but yeah, I got some stuff, and I was looking back to what struck what I wrote down. And this movie that night was such and such, and I thought, wow, that's really wild for them to put that on out there. But you're talking about the early '70s, and I can remember like some of them where had quasi downer ending, like for example the Crowhaven Farm, or there was another one from the mid '70s called The Devil's Triangle,
Mm-hmm.
or there was others. Gosh, I'm just thinking about from the early '70s. Gosh. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Some really, really wicked movies on prime time
Yeah.
where evil wins. The Brotherhood of Satan with Strother Martin,
Right.
and of course that was a film that was shot here in '69 outside of Santa Fe in Madrid, and that's a place that has become a place for some really powerful wizards and witches on out there.
Right.
And yeah, a lot of those things. And all it is how do you say? Getting into the conscious and subconscious so that you're around this type of evil and that you have seeing it inside your house on TV, that evil partly wins or completely wins.
Right. And this
Or you
was
have it.
also didn't they have also that movie that came out, Race with the Devil? It was around in the 70s. You remember that?
Yeah, that's going to be with a Warren Oates, like from '74 or so, '75.
I know it was like mid 70s.
Right.
That it was no, it wasn't New Mexico, but it was shot out there. I want to say the setting was somewhere out in the Southwest or something like that.
Right. Yeah, and that's about the four people in
In the
Winnebago.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
exactly, with the satanic that they and but we were talking about not only the thing but the subject matter that you didn't whether you saw a lot of the how can I say that the it wasn't just scary movies that they became very dark, very like satanic. The subject matter was always satanic tied in,
Well,
that
yeah,
kind of deal.
this one like from I'm going to say just remembered now. I forgot the title. I can look it up in my journal or one of my papers, diary, whatever, for lack of better words. It was a movie that was made like around I don't know '72 with Lloyd Bridges, where they all go to this resort and come to find on out they've all died and now they're in hell. I mean, and they're showing that on prime time on Saturday
Correct.
night. This is before
Exactly.
Edward Asner got popular there, and they're all trying to figure out where they're at and how they got here. And yeah, I mean, it's just, and that's tame compared to some other type of stuff of witches and murders and cults.
Well,
And,
let's
yeah.
let's use the Twilight Zone. The Twilight, but the Twilight Zone, it had its weird sci-fi, themes, but it was never not really dark per se.
Well, it
Dark,
did
but
not.
not
Yeah.
like I can't sleep.
No, well, yeah, there was some that I couldn't sleep. I mean, that's a long time ago. But
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't as in, how do you say, that Luciferian
No.
magic wins. You're going to, sometimes in those movies, it's going to be like, or Twilight Zone, it's going to give you a lesson. This is what happens
Right.
if you do this, if you go with badness. But in other words, it's always going to have, I say, a silver lining as
Mm-hmm.
compared to those TV movies from the early '70s of
Yes.
just of darkness is going to win. It's all over, baby.
Yeah, right. That eventually, even though sometimes even the main character, and I remember because even though at some point that main character, the white hat, whatever you want to call it, looks like he wins, then at the end you see the whatever, triumphs or comes back or is pregnant or something. Like, in other words, the evil that was, the villain is not really totally vanquished.
Yeah.
There was that and I was like, okay, you know what? I could see that for a couple of movies where they're thinking, let's do a part two on it, a subsequent movie. But yeah, I remember that there was a big change in the way the theme of the good and the
Well,
evil.
it was a big theme that changed all through society, not only with how do you say TV, but with media, with music, and where you got the beginning of the power of the acid rock of the
Mm-hmm.
satanic groups, be it Black Sabbath. I mean, what does Black Sabbath mean? That means, devil's mass, on Sunday,
Right.
the devil's mass. You get all this other type of music coming on out. You get Americans being bombarded with the negative. Yeah, it's amazing, and I get all these other shows, these wholesome shows with light comedy, be it Green Acres or
Yeah, I remember
uh,
Petticoat Junction,
yeah,
all those
Petticoat
things.
Junction, getting canceled and getting these in-your-face, really crass comedies because they became very crass after the
Mm-hmm.
first year, which would be like All in the Family or Maude, etc. Now, well, I'll say this with Maude, you had, gosh, what was her name? Now I just can't think of it. Anyway, uh, forget about that. I'll get into another line of thought on that was as far as what you saw and how society was changing. For example, and we talked about this before I got on the line, and we were just mentioning this, but Sammy Davis Jr., who is, all he's confessed to other people before he died that he was a Satanist.
And you know what?
Uh,
That I remember when I heard that, I was like, huh? I was like,
yeah. Well, he had a show on, I think it was ABC, and it was where he was a devil, like say living in New York City or Los Angeles in a
mm-hmm.
human form, being Sammy Davis Jr., and it was done with a comedy type of theme, and his stuff was to get people to do bad, and I think the show was called Poor Devil, and
Really?
it lasted only X amount of weeks, and then it was taken on off. And they said it was didn't get the ratings. I doubt that because there was other stuff that stayed on that didn't get the ratings. I'm sure that maybe some of the people said, hey, you know what, this is too much in people's face. We can't have
Well,
this.
don't you
We got
remember that this was around the time that Flip Wilson, his line was, "The devil made me do it,"
right,
which is funny. It's I'm not saying I'm not let's not get carried away, but you remember that was his signature thing.
right, uh huh,
Yeah,
yeah.
devil made me do it.
But with Sammy Davis Jr., he's playing Satan or a devil, whatever,
Right.
on TV every week,
I don't
etc.
remember that. I gotta look that up. I don't remember that about
Well,
him.
I
I
well,
I,
let me.
I just remember him singing Candyman. Oh, gee.
Yeah, okay. Well, he did that very good when he
Yeah.
was, I guess, off his cocaine, and he could do it good. And I've seen him really do it bad. But there was in the mid '60s, he used to have a show, and it would come on. I forget. I don't think it was every week, but if you ever see that, look it up on the internet. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end, he does some dancing. He was a magnificent dancer, but at the last, as the credits are rolling,
Right.
uh, there's a white background. He's silhouetted in black as he's dancing, and then he hunches his back and he bends his knees as he hops around, and the way that he does his head, it makes him look like the silhouette of the devil as he's going. Yeah, yeah, again, too, in your face, USA.
Uh
You've got,
huh.
yeah, Satanism right there.
Isn't that that's incredible? Because again, we were talking about that earlier. There's a lot of symbolism that people just didn't know what they were looking at. They didn't
Right.
realize what it was, in other words.
Yeah.
And
And
because, of course, we're going to come right back to it, because people were innocent.
they're
People were,
innocent. But now we got the sheeple there, and because
yeah,
the kids are being taught that this is not the greatest country in the world, and that's wrong.
yeah.
It is. I kiss the ground of this country. I
Hmm.
don't have to come from overseas. I come on. I kiss. I'm glad that I'm here. And thing about that is now they don't have to camouflage it, and you got the sheeple say, "Oh, we'll accept it." No, I mean,
It's a
and that's
shame.
going to be the future. That's going to be the big clash. You're going to have a war against Christianity the way that it's going, because you're going to say, "Well, you can't do this. We know better, and science says this, and science is run by Soros." Oh yeah, sure.
Well, you know what, and it's a shame because part of this, one of the things that, to me personally, this country is that it's tolerance.
Yeah.
Okay, live and let live. It's not like one, of course, you're always going to have a group of people that are going to say what we do is better, we're number one, or we're whatever. You want to, that's human nature. But at the end, as far as allowing people to live or practice tolerance has always been, I think, one of the hallmarks of the United States, uh, which is, okay, let's agree to disagree at worst case scenario. Or, hey, I'll just ignore you. I'll do my own thing. And that
Well,
was
yeah. Well,
it.
the thing about that is, if you disagree now
Oh,
with the liberal Democrats, you're saying
yeah.
that you are
You're
systemic racist.
No, no,
So okay, because
it becomes it's out of proportion totally.
right. So I disagree with them about the economy. No, I'm not a racist. Okay, well then I'll disagree with you about let's see, about us buying fuel from the Middle East rather than us being self-sufficient like we were
Right.
under Trump.
Mhm.
Well, no,
Yeah.
that doesn't make me okay. Well then, if I disagree with you that Oswald was not the lone gunman, oh, you're
Right,
systematic.
exactly.
Yeah,
It
I mean,
becomes everything leads,
everything. Yeah,
how do we
yeah,
end up at the
yeah.
same ending if we. Right, exactly. And no,
So I
no,
gotta,
there's no
yeah,
tolerance now. There isn't. There
Big
isn't.
Brother. So yeah, so 1984. No, I'm not going to be that way. And just like, for example, well, with Americans have just got to say no more. You got the Constitution. This is the way it is, and you
Right.
stand on it, and you do not be bullied. And what was that word that they used? That phrase?
Which
It's
one?
that we you mentioned before we got online here, and it was about businesses saying that you are, gosh, that you're not important, that
Oh,
you're not.
essential.
Yeah, okay. And here we have these politicos who have all this money, and they're getting money from checks every month because
Oh
they're,
yeah, no, they didn't have to
yeah,
worry about getting
yeah.
paid.
And they're just going to say, okay, you are not essential. So you restaurant people, you're not essential.
Right. Or
We're
anything.
sorry.
There's so many
Yeah,
retail businesses where,
yeah.
God.
So mom and pop type businesses are not essential, but Walmart is, and a
Hmm.
strip joint is, but
And the
you can't
liquor
do this.
liquor store
Yes,
were doing
yeah.
well.
And but everything on else, we don't care about your bills. You're not essential. Well, you know what? You are essential, and
Hmm.
you make it known that you are essential. And this other stuff about the well, your science that you're saying about this and that, and about COVID, and about us having to get inoculated again. No, that's like stuff from the age of Magellan. All it is control. You want us to seek heil you, and yeah, I can't stand it. So people that are listening here, I mean, you are essential, and tell these people to stick it in their ear. I mean, it's
But you know what? And this is the thing people don't realize. Okay, so in other words, you're only important and essential if it's the big picture. But
yeah,
hey, I'm essential to the well-being of, let's say, my family, and that's
yeah,
really all it comes right down to.
yeah,
Okay. So yeah,
yeah,
because whatever I was doing, which was putting food on the table or a roof over our head and clothing, and that's all the essential that you really need to be, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't, but they raise the threshold of essential to such a high level that everybody below it just like they got screwed. They got hurt, and a lot of businesses and a lot of employee of businesses. There's it was beyond damage. There's no coming back from it, and it's a shame. It's a
yeah,
total shame because it's like a ripple effect. The effect goes outwards, and yeah, there's been immediate effects, but even even as you go along, there's other. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that all these payments that they've been making to people to compensate them for their like the stimulus checks. People don't realize that that those things that debt collectors can basically take them away from people. So here you've got people who've lost their jobs. Okay, the way they make their money, a lot of them have probably fallen behind in their bills or they got debt collectors after them. And these same people can go ahead and take this money from them that's meant. So where does that leave the person that was hurt at the end of it? Through no
right,
fault of their own. A lot of people don't realize that there was a lot of things that it looked great, except people didn't realize that really the only big giant banks and companies were really the ones that were benefiting at the end when all is said and done. And it's a
yeah.
shame.
No, I caught that right away. I mean, I thought to myself, okay, Biden, I mean, the only time he's not lying is when his lips aren't moving. You can use that for Bush, son of Bush too. I mean, with weapons of mass destruction. I
Oh,
never bought that one. Yeah,
that's a
and
whole different thing. I mean, and you know what? I want to say if anything has come out of maybe the last 15, 18 months is that a lot of people are looking at a lot of recent history and a lot of politics and thinking, man, was I wrong? What?
yeah,
Or they're just looking at it with different eyes and going, what? Because they were too busy, what we talked about, too busy carrying on, decided to trust the wrong people, the wrong politicians, didn't look at what laws were being passed, whether they were local, state, or federal. And now they're looking at everything with different eyes. It's like, man, this is a hard pill to swallow, but I better wake up and look at.
right.
And I think a lot of people before that weren't paying attention are paying attention because it's been a very rude awakening. Very
Yeah,
rude.
right. And the thing, yeah, and the thing right now, okay, yeah, and I cast shade not only on Democrats but also on Republicans. I mean, I cannot
Yeah.
stand. I'm an America First type of person. I want,
Yeah.
and this is I see. Oh, the new boss. Well, he's going to be just like the old boss. I mean, we got Billy Jeff Clinton, then we got son of Bush. I'll tell you something else here too. Okay, now think about this. Now I'm really going to date my. Well, okay, I'm gonna camouflage this here.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
but you ask anybody back in November 1963, and they can remember exactly where they were when the news came on over the radio or over TV, where they were when they heard that JFK had been shot and was being rushed to Parkland Hospital. And
Mm-hmm.
they can remember, who they were, where they were, this kind of stuff, or the
Exactly.
reaction, and then the, X amount of time, maybe 45 minutes later, the bulletin that the president is dead. Okay, now you ask anybody, and they'll be able to tell you, right? Okay, now again, because I've been throwing shade on Obama and Biden and everybody else, but now I'm throwing shade on Bush Senior. When you asked the late Bush Senior where he was at, he couldn't remember.
That's very telling.
Yeah, and you know where he was at?
Where?
Dallas, Texas. That's
Hmm.
all come on out. He was part of,
Wow.
yeah, okay, part of that group that was there as far as, what happened there in Dealey Plaza. And again, Dealey Plaza, this is something else. We'll get back into the paranormal on this here.
Let's go.
But, Dealey Plaza, you have X amount of minutes off of the 33rd. You have X amount of seconds off of the 33rd, the meridian. You have
Mm-hmm.
these meridians. There's something about the 33rd meridian and I wish I had paid more attention to it. There was this one guy about 30 years ago. He knew it backwards and forwards. Old man. And about, the power of numbers and stuff like this, magic, etc. And anyway, the 33rd meridian, the top level that you can get to inside the
Masons.
Masons is going to be the 33rd.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that 33rd is not by deeds of going to burnt hospitals and helping the poor kids or poor people that have been burnt to cinders. The 33rd is you got to be picked. It's the old boys club. So the
Mm-hmm.
33rd meridian comes into the USA, and it goes to Charleston. You can have the minutes, the seconds, etc. So it goes to Charleston, South Carolina. So that's where the first Mason temple was. And where does it go? Dallas, Texas. Okay. You got the three roads coming into Dealey Plaza. You've got, in other words, what I'm saying is there's more to it than there's, how do you say, magic, sexual magic, all attached to that as
Right.
far as the jolt to the American consciousness
Yes.
as when JFK got assassinated there in Dealey Plaza. So then you keep on going west, and where does it go? Trinity, New Mexico. Trinity, it's the
Mm-hmm.
Father, Son, the Holy Ghost. And what happened in Trinity, New Mexico? 1945, July, the first atomic bomb goes off. That's where we
Wow. I did not know
exploded
that.
before we dropped them on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then on Japan, what flanks the 33rd? Hiroshima, Nagasaki.
Wow.
See, I'm talking about all these things hidden in front of us.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and for example, the only club that you're able to drink liquor in Disneyland is the top secret Club 33.
Yes, I've heard of that. And it's, what is it? It's there for you to see, or if you have the eyes to see it with. But most people are like, you know, dare I say the C word? The conspiracy theorists. You know, one of those, if you talked about that too much, because that's a way to make you look like a wacko, you know,
Uh-huh.
and except because that's the best way to really, how can I say, make somebody or a certain subject to degrade it, make it,
Yeah,
attach madness to it, if you're associated with it, if you entertain it, if you talk about it. Oh, you're one of those. It's like,
right.
okay, I guess I'm not one of those. Well, let me just stay away from that.
Well, here's some Spock. Uh, in an insane world, the sane are decreed insane.
Of course. And that's
Yeah.
lately there's a lot of people running around going, God, yes. It's a sad thing. I mean, we can laugh about it, but I think a lot of people have been having a rude awakenings, like I said before, in a very condensed period of time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the whole thing, and I think, and I've spoken about it before on some of the other shows I've mentioned, where that I say, you know what, everybody talks about, because of the loss of job and everything, and the psychological impact, etc. And I agree with that, but I say, but there's another psychological, um, how can I say, harm that comes to people, that I think that people now, it's like, man, this happens so quickly, and my life was altered so dramatically. People, you used to have this trust of, of like, I can make plans, whether you have this job or whatever your plans were. If you were a student, you were going to go off to school. You had plans to get married. You had plans on vacation. This is the hope. This is what makes normal people happy. Your plans. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Hey, we're going to buy a house. Whatever is going on in your world. And I think that a lot of people that had their world so totally from one moment to the next for such a length of time, even though things are kind of like that same trust in the destiny, like, it's not there. It's not.
Right.
People have lost it totally. Like, nah, man, I never thought this could happen, and it did. And it's still,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I was way before this happened. I mean, a zillion years ago. I was always, because of background that I had of experiencing death around me, etc. Some really violent death. That I said, embrace the contemporary. You cannot tell what's going to happen. And like I
Mm-hmm.
used to, say, well, those people on the Titanic, they didn't think that, at dinner time
Oh, hell
that
no.
come midnight, that they're going to be in the Atlantic, or
No.
they're going to, yeah. And the same thing, like, for example, you look at somebody who was, delivering newspapers there on September 11th, or somebody who's working there at
No.
dawn, and he passes by the Twin Towers. He's never going to think that, well, a few hours from now, it's going to be a couple of piles of rubble. And
Right.
that's what I always tell people is, you've got to live in the contemporary. Sure, okay, watch your money and try to do the best you can inside the capitalistic business, but remember, you're here to grow your soul. You're not here to get attached to all these baubles and take your mind
Mm-hmm.
into the heroin of watching NFL football, or that being your god,
Yeah.
or this or that. You're supposed to do other things. And
Yeah,
yeah, but
but you know what? And also part of this was, to me, is that even when you had 9/11, okay, it was a certain part of the country. As a matter of fact, I remember the rest of the United States, we poured in, people were donating money, whatever, I mean, whatever it took. I mean, everybody just like helped New York. And when we have natural disasters in another part of the country, the rest of the country turns around and does help them. You understand what I'm saying?
yeah,
But now this was like across the board. Okay, nobody was spared on this, and I think that's why it was like, wow. Um, it's almost like, oh, that how can I say it? That sense of invulnerability that I think a lot of people have because of where we live and how we live. It's evaporated.
well, here's the thing, and this is something that I'll give to a guy who I admired in many ways, G. Gordon Liddy,
Mm-hmm.
and they got this and they put it into a line in some TV show. But he was pretty smart about this. He says, okay, as Americans, our first lingo is not pain. It's going to be English. But if you go into other parts of the world like Vietnam, Cambodia, but then they changed their names, Kampuchea to Laos.
Mm-hmm.
What's their lingo? It's pain. So if you grow on up around pain, then you're gonna, that's your language is pain. Then you're gonna be aware of how fleeting this life is,
Right.
and that's the difference between what we had
Yeah.
as you know, uh, couch potatoes.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been very sheltered. We
Yeah,
take a lot of the good fortune that we've had for granted. And this is the first time we've kind of, some of us, not, I'm not going to say, like I said, depending, certain people have lived in certain moments of time in the United States that they felt the pain,
yeah,
but overall, I'm saying is a majority. At the same
right.
time, yeah, a lot of people had a moment where it was like, okay, it's like, pinch me. This is a nightmare, right? Like,
Right. And again, too, like our garbage disposals, our garbage disposal eats better than 90% of the world.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
no matter how bad it is here in the USA, lack of education or whatever, the game is made in such a way that if you're ambitious and you want to
Oh,
study
yeah.
the game, you're going to become a player and you're going to be able to make money and live a
Sure.
comfortable life.
Yes.
You can be a plumber, you can do this, you can do
Yeah, of
that.
course.
Sure, you
Yeah.
know, if you don't have the education, you can't become a doctor, you can't do this. But there are ways to make even more money
And
than
live a
doctors.
very, very comfortable life.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
comfortable life.
yeah. But of
Once
course,
upon a
they're not.
time, I don't know about the future, but
Well, in the future, say okay.
I don't know.
You
That's
know,
still up for grabs,
the,
I
the
think.
the the three B's: bullets, beans, and bandages.
There you
Be
go.
prepared because they may yank
Gotta
this
remember that.
country into civil war. Yeah. Well, there's a couple more B's too. Now, if you want, if I want to be PG,
All
I'll say in
right.
Bibles, and then if I want to say another way, like old comrades, well, then it's the cleaned up version is broads.
Okay, there you go. Whatever. But yeah, but I was gonna say, you gotta be
Yeah.
Hispanic when you throw that beans thing in there.
Mucho frijoles
Mucho
y
frijoles.
armas.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's yeah, yes. I that's why I was laughing. That's great.
Okay, yeah, I just
I'm telling you.
my authenticity just snuck out again.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
okay.
well, with the necessities of life, such as
Yeah.
they are, everybody, that's great. Anyway, Alan, thank you so much. It has been absolutely wonderful to have you talk to us and tell us your stories. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. I really enjoyed
Let me
my
tell you
time with
something.
you.
I have a I'm going to be
Oh, let me give
putting.
you my. Okay, let me give you. Okay, let me give you my. At the end, let me give you my address.
Go
My
ahead. Go
email.
ahead.
Okay.
I'm going to put it on
Okay.
the
For
credits of
people.
the show, but for the podcast
Okay.
listeners, go ahead and put
Okay.
out your website.
Okay. To get a hold of me and to do a tour with me, or get me as a lecturer, or buy one of my books, or whatever. The website is Santa Fe Ghost and History Tours.com.
Okay.
Santa Fe Ghost and History Tours.com. Or Google or Yahoo Al Pacheco Santa Fe Ghost, and my website. You'll see my
Yes,
email,
yes, you come up
etc.
right
And go from
away
there.
on any of the
Yeah.
searches. By the way, I've been having a slide that's come on. As a matter of fact, right now you can see it says Tours of Santa Fe, and it's got your Santa Fe Ghost and History Tours.com. But of course, the people that are going to see it are the people that are going to see the video version of the interview. That's why I wanted you to give out the information for the podcast listeners, so that
Oh
they could
yeah.
have it.
Well, I'm going to be doing podcasts in the near future.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so and it's going to be one's going to be on through Apple and through other companies here,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
if you like those my take on things and my
Sure.
bad sense of humor, then go to Santa Fe Ghost and Paranormal Tales, and they'll be on out in the next
Right,
few
so
weeks.
you're going
And
to
you'll,
put everything once you get that going on your website, right?
right, yeah,
Okay. On the actual
and
that same website. Okay.
yeah, and then of course you can go to Apple or whatever and click on there.
Right,
and
right,
see
right.
what,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
they'll take. Again, it has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Alan. And you got to
Okay,
come back because we got to keep going with this conversation.
yeah, I mean, it's like two pals there at the
Oh
the
yeah.
bar
It's been
drinking
great.
some lager. Okay, my friend, do take care. All the best. Be safe, and we'll talk when we'll talk.
Absolutely. Take care.
Okay, bye
Bye-bye.
bye, my dear. Bye bye.
Wow. Let me tell you, what's really funny is that I spent so much time talking to Alan even before we started rolling that it's like I kept thinking I got to stop this. I want to record this. because he's got great stories, and I love his sense of humor. And we were just talking about all the different things, that about. I mean, because he's been doing this. His family's originally from that area. He's been living there all his life, and like everything, he knows when you live in a place a certain amount of time. I know this. I was born and raised in Miami. I know a lot of things about Miami that only a native Miamian will know. Okay, because I saw Miami grow up. I saw highways put down. I lived in areas that were. I remember when I was growing up, Miami was East Miami, Miami Beach, and the downtown area, and everything west of that was basically in the southwest area was the agricultural belt of Miami-Dade County. And besides that, there was nothing else out there. A lot of dairy cows. Okay, the Hialeah racetrack. So my point being that when you grow up in an area, you know everything about it. You know the official and the unofficial history of things that have gone on in that city because just you can't help it. And that's why I love talking to him because he's got all this interesting, you know, information about where he grew up in and about and his. I imagine that's why he's been doing these tours for so long because he makes them so interesting. Because I've done tours, I've done walking tours, and believe me, there's the quality of the person that's giving the tour as far as when they start throwing all these stories and behind this not stuff that you hear on the TV this is stuff that it's like, man, I didn't know that. And that's what I think makes the difference when you have somebody that is from that area and knows all the stories. And again, I like I said, I'm going to have a link to his website on the credits of the show, and you, for those on the podcast that you heard it, he's going to be eventually launching his own podcast having to do with stories about that area and that he's familiar with in the Southwest and so forth. And as for myself, go to miamighostchronicles.com or marlenepardo.com if you either want to submit a story, if you want to get information on any of the podcasts, or the videos, there's a link to the different podcast platforms. However, and I want to remind people of this, if you ever want to listen to any of the podcasts of any of the shows without commercial interruption, go to the links that I have there where you can either listen or download the MP3 file directly from my website, and there's no commercial interruption, none, from any of the show links that I have on my website. Once you go to the different podcast platforms, they run some type of advertising on there, so it depends. And I know some people have these podcast platforms that this is what they like. This is where they get their podcast from, or same thing with the videos, whatever the case. But again, if you don't want to get any interruptions, not only in Stories of the Supernatural, but either Nightshade Diary or Supernatural Storytime, if you get the download or listen to it directly, you can click on it and listen to the MP3 file right then and there. It's going to be straight through with no interruptions of any type. And again, I'm about to I'm following up now and just about to finish up on the book that follows this one. Okay, wait a minute. Here we go. Eric, which is book 2 of the Film Noir Murders. This one's going to be titled Hot Dame on a Cold Slab. This is the book number 1, and basically, it's just different true crime stories that happened. I want to say between the 20s and the 50s in that general area of time, and like I said, sometimes there was certain crimes committed that made the papers and notoriety, and even now they're still writing about it, and you do these docu-series, but when you do research, you run across, man, there was some really unusual unsolved crimes, or even true crime that were, God, that you never hear about, you never find out about them, and that's what I've written about. Some guy gained a little bit of notoriety, and that's one of the things that you found. Sometimes these, because this is around the time that newspaper was king. People got their news from newspapers and maybe the radio and then maybe TV, but mostly it was the newspapers. And they ran with these stories, especially like, the more horrific let's face it, the more attention it got. But depending on what was going on, some of these stories petered out really quick. So basically, they were forgotten. They got a bunch of attention, and then they just, whoosh, especially if nothing came of it. If leads went cold on a case, um, and then, um, it, eventually what happened was that some other great story or horrific story came and took its place. And then when you come across and do the research and you find, and that's what the book is about. So if you're one of these true crime aficionados, unsolved mysteries, like I said, some of them got resolved. Uh, some of them didn't. In some cases, you didn't even know who the victim was, much less who who committed the crime. And I guess my point is that sometimes we get carried away nowadays, thinking, "Man, people are horrible today." Or these crimes are so horrific. Man, there's even back then in the good old days, people were pulling off. There was some really dark stuff going on. Those psychopaths, which we did back then. The term serial killer wasn't being used. Um, they were running around, and my point being that a lot of these crimes, we always think of the angle of revenge, hate, love, somebody that's been, had a love-hate relationship, as those being the motivators for murders. And you'd be surprised. There was a lot of these crimes, like today, from what you you want to consider a psychopath, sociopath, where there was no emotional involvement that you would say, this is what made this person snap and kill another human being. No, there was no, for lack of a better word, it was stranger against stranger. It was purely the act of killing another human being that made them do what they did. So, and of course, like I said, that term serial killer was not in use, but you could see that in some cases where the perpetrator was not identified or even apprehended, it's like, how many other crimes did they commit that were, in other words, that they never tied in these crimes as being the handiwork of the same perpetrator, either because this person was smart enough to move to other areas for a while and then maybe come back, or maybe they had a type of job where they traveled, or one of those deals, and yeah, and they were smart enough, like I say, to keep their mouths shut and never talk about what they did, and they took it to their graves. Very interesting stuff. So I will keep you guys abreast of when that book is released. You can find it on my website or through Amazon. And any of my other books, just go to my author page. It's Marlene Pardo Pellicer on Amazon, and you'll find all my books listed there. You can either get the Kindle or the print version of the book. Again, Guy, thank you so much. You have been wonderful. I hope you enjoyed this show with Allan Pacheco. I loved it because we just went all over the place, and that's what I consider as a good show, spontaneity. And believe me, we have plenty of that tonight. See you next week. Take care.